Okay, so welcome to our beautiful spring basket theme that we've got tonight of a still life. So with a still life, I do try and pop a little bit of a little bit of drawing, but not a lot really, because we'll kind of move things about. But it's quite good to have a little bit of a plan and just get some a little bits of details on there, so that we've got a start. Now, because this is quite a big block of colour. I will actually draw in like some of the shape and we'll put the background on and bring the background in a little bit into the shape here. If it was really finicky, so if it was like this one, it might be easier. So where the daffodils are and all these shapes, to actually just put that blue on first and then put the daffodil heads over the top of that. But where you've got a big solid block with acrylic, we can just, we can go in and just pop that in there. So I'm just going to reach for my pencil. I think I've got it over there. There we go. And just an ordinary pencil is absolutely fine. If you find, setting out a little bit more tricky, then really easily you can just get a pen or a pencil and like just divide it into four. So just have like a 4/4 grid, just so it's easy to see where everything's placed. And this picture will scale up to any size. You can go huge, like to A1, it should scale up correctly. And obviously A5, A3, any of those sizes. So all I'm going to do on my board, I'm just going to pop the middle. For me, I just need the middle line to help me a little bit. And then I'll be able to place everything else, use the size of my paper and the edges of the paper to kind of place everything. So I'm just going to make that. Now I'm going to work a little bit more darkly. So I'm going to put more pressure on my pencil, but because especially if you're going to do some light colours, sometimes that will scrub up when you're putting that on. It'll scrub the pencil up underneath and it may, you may get a little bit of a muddy light colour. So if you do yours really lightly, I'll do mine darkly, otherwise you won't be able to see it on the camera, and then that will be fine. So all I'm going to do is when we're doing this one's a fairly simple one in terms of when I think about how that this one's got lots of things stacked on it, which is fine. I would tend to go in, a bottom half and a top half with a still life. If we were doing this from life, then we would just like work out kind of within a framework how we would, which side, how we would fit that in. But from a photograph, we can do this. So this is very loosely. So I'm going to leave lots of opportunity to actually adapt this as I go. So that's why I'm not worried about the sketching. It's just getting the general shape. Really don't want this to be like a perfect drawing, because we're going to go over it quite quickly and block out lots of this colour to start with. So we don't need to worry about the drawing side of it. It's just more about the placement, making sure we're placing things and getting them in. But even so, you can adapt it. So you can make this, you can make the basket bigger, smaller, have more, have more background in there. So because you're the artist, and it's artistic license to choose your choice. It's entirely down to you how much you choose to put on there. I'm going to stick fairly true to this because I quite like the layout and the composition of it. But you can make that decision, how much you want to pop on. So where you've got a few frilly bits there, I'll just kind of make a little bit of a sketchy mark there. Yeah. And then with a still life, what I would be thinking about here is how I'm going to, how I'm going to get that whole stack on. Because it's a real temptation to kind of start somewhere and work around, but actually sometimes you can then end up going off the page here or off the page at the top. So quite often it's just as easy and quite helpful to just get the outer ones in and maybe something at the top here, and then focus on the middle ones and then fill in anything in between. So it wouldn't matter which one you were doing, even if you were doing this one, again, you would, you can like find the outer ones and then the inside one. And same here, you could put the outer eggs in here and then here, and then make sure you've got like just a little mark at the top where these go. So I'm just going to start that. So I'm going to pop this outer edge one on here, this one on the outer edge, a little bit there. And then we can adapt the size then. If they're not quite accurate, we can adapt the size. I might be looking, there's 4 big eggs across here. I'm going to pop the outer one in here. And that's really just to make sure everything's going to fit in there. And then I want to look at this top one, the highest one up here, which is slightly smaller, isn't it, when we look at the size of it. Just the angle, I think, goes backwards there. And then, you know, from here, we can start to then work in some of the other ones. I mean, we could put that one in as well that's over here. And again, I'm doing it fairly loosely because I'm not sure exactly yet whether I've got all of these exactly at the right size. And it doesn't matter if we haven't, which is why we kind of just very loosely pop them in, and we can tighten up those things a little bit once we start to paint on it, because you know, there's just no point in doing all this beautifully, you know, detailed work and then we're just going to paint over. So we're just trying to get a general sketch in. So I'm going to then now look at these, a few of these here as well, just to make sure these front ones are going to fit. And remember that one of the really important things is we're trying to do our artist impression. We're not trying to recreate this photograph. So it's your artist impression of the photo, we're not trying to get this, you know, very, very perfect photograph. And then we'll pop this one in. One comes up a bit further, a bit higher. I'm just looking at, you know, which kind of where they're tilted and things like that. If you're not sure about which way they're tilted, you can just get your pencil or something else and just have a little look at the general angle and just transfer that across. That's probably coming up a little bit far, but I'm not too worried about that at the minute. And adjust it as we go. We tend to focus more on each piece as we go through in more detail. Yeah, and then we can just pretty much start to fill in between, like the missing part, or the missing bits. So, you know, this one over here. It's like here. Probably get some more big ones in as well. So I bring in top of this blue egg here. And this one. And it's just a bit like a jigsaw puzzle, really. Because then, you know, it makes it so much easier for us to get everything else into place, basically. And this is obviously a much bigger one, so we want that kind of proportionally, if we can, to be a little bit bigger. That's probably the biggest one on there, I think, or maybe not that one. Similar one. And then you can just adapt slightly, you know, as you go. And then we've got some of these in the background here underneath. What else have we got here? Yeah, one behind. And then we've got another, maybe 1, 2 there. I think that's a very similar colour underneath it, isn't it? So we'll just fitting those in between the gaps. And it might mean, you know, that's where you can adjust some of them, but at least then we'll know with a still life, we've got the general idea of making things kind of fit proportionally. So that's a nice thing. I do think it's something that comes as well. The more we do, the more we look at things in a still life, the more, you know, we get used to fitting this jigsaw together. And this is just really, really our loose plan, because where we go from there is we can do all sorts with that. Okay, so I'm not even going to draw any of these bits on or not anything at all. I'm just kind of leaving it there, really. And this has gone up at perhaps a little bit higher, but I'm happy with that. That's okay. It doesn't really matter. There we go. So so it's just kind of mapping out something that so you've got that start in there really. And then we're just really having a look. I'm going to go in with the background. What I will do with the background though is I'll bring it just in a little bit into those eggs. So if we decide we're going to move things a little bit, then we've made sure that we've brought that background in nicely, so we don't have to kind of put any more down. So actually what we can do with the acrylics as well, we're going to use a layered approach and build up the layers on the inside here. But with the background, if you're wanting to get a nice kind of blended effect, then we can put the acrylics on, mix up a few different tones of acrylics. And so I'll just get my little acrylic pad here, a few different tones of acrylics, and then we can apply them when they're wet and blend them into each other, which is what I'm going to do for the background on this one anyway. But again, as I said, you can go with any of those, any colours that you really fancy. One of the things I think with spring purples is the purple varies so much. So I have got some different tones of purples here. So one of the things to be thinking about, I think, for the spring is, and this is just for my background really as well, but we've got lots of spring flowers that have got purples and things in them. So we've got cooler based purples, which have got really just got more blue in them. And warmer based purples, which have just got a little bit more red in them. So this is an oriental violet. This one's cobalt, which you do get cobalt blue, so that's got more blue on. This has just got a little bit more red in it. So we can just think about that and also experiment with those colours as well and just see which you prefer, because just because this feels a bit more cool tone. I'm just going to squirt out my paint on here. Just because it feels a bit more cool doesn't mean we have to use it. But it's just good to explore the colours in our palette a little bit, and just while we've got the opportunity to have a try of them, you might prefer actually if you mix up, you might think, oh, actually, I prefer the warmer violet. So I'm going to go out just for this base. It comes out. If it comes out, it will come out. Right at the bottom, there we go. I'm also going to pop in maybe a little bit of the blue as well, just on the palettes, because I quite fancy mixing a little bit of blue in there. Because we've got quite often on a background, we can vary it with different tones and things like that. So we've got some shadow areas and we've got some lighter ones. And also you don't have to blend this. You can make this really textured if you want to. If you really feel like doing that, then and get your mark making in there, then by all means do that. Okay. I'm going to also, see, I'm getting it all over already now. I'm also going to pop a bit of white out. So I'm going to use that to mix up a tint, which is really helpful with pastels particularly. If we want to keep our colours really vibrant, we'll use a lot less white in them. So for example, colours on here, you can almost go in with those brights as they are. This one as well, some real bright colours in there. If we add too much white to those, we'll just take all the colour out, and it will pastelise it. But for something like this, it's perfect. But there's loads of other colours you could pop in. You could make it a little bit more pink based. I'm just going to get some pink out anyway. The other colour I'm going to get to mix up maybe some more shadow to make things a bit darker. We can add a blue in there, but actually Payne's Grey is a great colour as well to explore with. So if you've got some Payne's Grey, which is almost like a really deep navy, it's a great alternative to going in with like actually with black, which can be quite an intense colour to go in with. Um, yes, I've got the Payne's Grey in there. So I'm going to try and mix up a few different tones to get in this background. and see. But I'm just going to use my little palette knife, but if you want to use a small brush or something like that, that's absolutely fine. And I've just got a bit of tissue paper just so I can clean off this, but you might have a bit of a rag or something like that. So I'm going to make a tint. So I'm going to start with some white and just add small amounts of the purple to it. So I'm going to go in with, I think this one, I'm going with blue-based purple. Just add smaller amounts to start with so that I don't overwhelm the purple. I'll have a little test. But as I said, you could use any, because you use the normal, just a normal round brush just to test. Sometimes they don't always look, do they, as they go into them. And again, I might not go for something that's absolutely exact like that. I might actually just go with what I really like, and I do really like that colour, to be fair. So, so it could be that one. The same for you. So if you're mixing up and you feel like, but I think I'm going to mix up some more. I'm going to go for more of a shadow colour somewhere. Some more, these feel a bit dark and a bit more blue. So I'm actually going to add, I think, just add some white again to this. I'm actually going to add some blue. I'm not going to add Payne's Grey to it because it will make it really dark. I want to just add a bit of blue. I almost want to add, sometimes pops of blue add a bit of vibrancy at the same time as well as making them a bit darker. But just keep mixing until it's looking like you want to, and then just have a little test, get these colours tested, and until you're happy and you feel it's just really lovely to be able to explore and play. Yeah, explore and have a little play with them, an experiment. I think it's so important to be able to do that. Because we're not exploring and trying, it's we're not really, well, it's not that we're not learning new things, we just end up doing very, similar things. Let's see. I think I'll put a little bit more, small amount of, so yeah, so just work through a little process of on the go. So I'm going to kind of bring this in so it's getting a little bit darker as I go through here. And then I'll end up with quite a dark. So I'm going to go in with probably purple and a bit of Payne's Grey just for this shadow here. But I'm mixing mine all up at the same time because I want to blend them together a bit. Now, if you don't want to blend them and you're fine with having lots of textures and colours, then by all means, go for that. I'm still going to add a tiny bit of white to that because I'm still not wanting such a big contrast. But if you like a big contrast, then go for that. That's absolutely fine. So I'm just going to start with just those few colours for the moment. I think I might need to mix a little bit more actually with this one. And then, just have a go. I'm going in with a flat brush just because I really like to lay on the first lines and things with a flat brush. I find it really easy to blend as well, like the edges and things like that. So all I'm going to do is just add a small amount of water so it's a little bit fluid. And again, it depends on which acrylic paints you're using. Some of them are a little bit more buttery, others are a little bit stiffer, a little bit more heavy bodied. Doesn't really matter. It's just more about getting a good consistency. So really you want a nice coverage on your, on your board so that And also, I think when you're trying to get to blend, having plenty on your brush is actually quite important. So I always have a good couple of millimeters of paint on my brush, really. And that'll help the edges of blends as well. So I'm bringing that in probably a little bit further than I need to, just so that it covers any changes I might make to the shapes of the edges of these. Also, it allows us a bit more freedom. We're not getting too caught up in the drawing side of it. We've got all of these, we've got plenty of paint on the brush. I'm just bringing that a little bit in because there's quite a bit of background showing through there. Yeah, because I've got plenty on the brush. We can then start to kind of blend the edges together a little bit. So I'm going to go in, bring in the next colour that's getting a little bit darker in there. And so here, you can just kind of bring it backwards and forwards until it's blending in nicely, because I've got plenty on my brush there. So that the edges kind of overlap and the paint just gives us a nice, just blends nicely in. Just get my other brush and just smooth that out. But as I said, you more, of course, if you love texture, use texture, because that's important to go with what you like as well. And then just continuing on, just bringing in some of these lovely tones in there. So even within this very simple background, we've got just a little bit of interest. I'm going to bring a bit of the other colour in as well. It's getting a bit darker on this side. I've got dark ones in there as well, just bringing it in. And then this basket, I'm overlapping just so that oops, I'm going under it in case I just want to move things around just a little bit. I've got that choice and freedom then to do that. And then I will start to kind of pop in a little bit of this much darker one. Again, because everything's still wet, it'll just blend nicely. And I don't know exactly until I get the bottom of that basket in, well, how far out this bit of shadow is going to come. But what I'll do is I'll just start to pop it in there. And if I want to add anything later, I will. I'll just pop a little bit more Payne's grey in there, I think. But we can just make these choices as we go in. You can try the colours again if you want to on a bit of paper, if it helps kind of make you feel a bit more confident about it. And rinse off my brush a little bit. And I'm just going to get a wet brown brush. I'm just going to blend it a little bit more here. And then with the really dark areas, I'm going to go in afterwards and kind of make that even darker, I think. But certainly the ones that are right underneath. And this is the thing, I always think, just don't go too dark to start with. And you can just build it up then so that you're happy. Some people love a really strong contrast and other people don't. So it's just developing your preference as you're painting to decide, oh, do I want that? Do I want it that dark, or shall I just kind of build it up and see what I want to do. And we don't always know, I think, with the background actually. Don't always know until the main, when the still life is in. So you don't have to make a decision now. So I'm just going to take a pause there and come and chat to you all, see how everybody's getting on. So we can have a little think about the nest. With that, I'm going to go in with a darker colour to start with. I think nest, well, I say nest, it's a basket, isn't it? But whichever, if you're doing a basket, sometimes it's just easier because there's so many little areas to it to actually go in and do all those dark shadows between it is really difficult. So if you actually go in with a darker colour to start with, it makes it easier to then you can go over the top and put all the raffia and everything in. And we can do that. So I'm just going to just get my brush and then start to mix up a little bit of colour in here. I'm going to go in with some brown. I'm going in with burnt umber, which is a bit darker. And then what I'll do is I'll just get all the other colours kind of over the top. So what I'm going to do with this one, you could just paint the whole thing a dark colour underneath and then start to paint your lighter colours over the top. But I do quite like, I'm just going to mix up this, because I think that brown's maybe not going to be quite as dark. I'm just going to mix some of this Payne's Grain with my brown. And what I'm going to try and do is just pop in with these colours, just some of the big brush marks underneath it, just so I can get a sense of the basket the movement of the basket as well, with some going that way and some coming down, just to get myself started so I don't lose where I am. But by all means, you can just block the whole thing out if it's much easier for you. Um, I'm just going to use the paint to actually just get these little marks in it. Might leave few little gaps between it as well, so I can see where I am. And just pop a few of these that go over the top this way. Just a little mind trick, really, just gives us a bit more confidence sometimes. Do this way. But yeah, so then we're not having to paint all of the dark bits that are in between as well. We can just get those lighter ones over the top. But if you want to do the eggs first, that's absolutely fine. So I'm just going in with a very dark colour with the basket, so that the shadows are much easier. Once we go over the top with the light colours, it's much easier to see the shadows rather than trying to paint in every tiny shadow, which is really takes so much time and can make it feel a little bit flat anyway. So if we get these nice dark shadows in over the top, get those in first, and then we can start to add the other layers. And also having that, this dark shadows in just gives it a little bit more depth as well. So we'll be able to see how, how thick this raffia or the wicker in the basket is. And I'm not really making these lines. I'm just popping a few lines in, so it gives me an idea of which way everything's moving. But you can just paint the whole thing dark to start with instead. It's just, I find this it helps to kind of just as not to lose our place when there's a lot going on in it. So I'm just kind of getting in some of the ones that go this way, some that go over the top. And we'll just pop them. And there's obviously lots of little raffia pieces on this one. I'll do those afterwards. But I'm not really paying too much attention at this stage to make it really, I'm not doing it really carefully. I'm just getting the base in. We're just preparing the under layers really is what we're doing here. So we've got a good foundation and a good base to build all these other colours up onto. And then maybe some of these that go this way. I've got brown and Payne's grey on here. And we can create those contour lines just with just with very thick paint. It's already starting to feel, we're getting some shape to it, which is nice. Helps us to see it's not just a big flat shape and we've got a few little lines in it. Still, you can do this with these contour lines for any topic that you're doing. Really helps. So I'm just bringing these contour lines just right back around the side, and then we're getting that nice, filling out that lovely shape there. Without really doing actually too much in it, we can start to kind of build up these other fabulous colours on top. So that's really what I would, say is like one of our base layers. And with the acrylics, we build up all of these different effects on top, so it feels, so it starts to feel really, really three-dimensional. So what I've been looking at now, and we put the dark in, is looking at all of the different tones and colours that we can see in here that are warmer. Or even, there might be have a bit of a cool tone, but all of these, what I would call mid-tones. So we've got our dark there. We're looking now for some mid-tones. Now, that could be like a straw colour. It could be, say, on something like this, the basket is really quite reddy brown. So colours for this, things like burnt sienna are great for that, and some yellow ochre. On this one that I'm demonstrating, we've got a few kind of sandy colours. And then there's also some other tones in here as well. So I'm not thinking about the very lightest, that will go on the very top layer. We put the light ones on last. so that it pulls forward into the light. So the dark colours will go backwards. The mid-tones will kind of start to create the shape and the depth with all of the different colours in there, make it feel much, more rounded as well. And then the final pops, the lights will go on top, and that will pull those bits forward. So we'll just look at the highlights after. So I'm going to go with, I'm just going to take this one off and just, actually, I've still got some space on this one. I'm going to go in with some kind of ready tones, and I'm going to bring in some also, excuse me, some almost kind of bluish tones into there as well. So I'm going to bring in a bit of yellow. So I might even bring 3 different tones of raffia in there before I even get to the blue one. So I'm going to bring in a warmish yellow. This one's like this one's light azo yellow, but it would be cadmium yellow, something that's warmer. It's got a little bit more red in it really than say a really bright acidic yellow, like lemon yellows is not got as much light in it, warmth in it. And then I'm going to pop a bit of this colour that I'm suggested to use for the basket, which is burnt sienna. These are really typical colours that we get in the set. And a little bit of that in. And then what else have we got? I'll use some white to make a tint with it as well. And I'm going to bring in, because I'm thinking I'm seeing some tones that are, so I'll mix the first tone. I'm going to add some blue as well, because I'm going to bring a little bit of blue tone into, but this is a different kind of blue than I used before. So this is the cerulean. This is just reminds you of lovely Mediterranean skies, which is just gorgeous. Now, not quite like our kind of sky blue colours, but nice all the same. So I'm just going to think about the different tones in here. So I'm going to mix up 3 different colours actually. I'm going to mix up one with this burnt sienna. Because these are quite light, I think, on here. These raffia colours are actually quite light, whereas the baskets are a bit brighter. But again, you don't have to go light at all. So that is just burnt sienna and white tint. So it's made it very pastely, taking all of the colour out of there. So I'll use that one as one of the colours. Then I'm going to mix up, to use a little bit more actually. More burnt sienna, because I'm going to use that for another tone. A bit more white as well, I'm running out of that. So yes, I've got this lovely colour. So I'm going to take some burnt sienna again. I'm going to add some white to that as well. But this time I'm feeling like there's this bluish tone in there with some of these strands. And again, this is entirely up to what you might see a completely different colour. And if you do, then you just mix up what you think you can see there. That's great. Because it's your artist impression. That's why your colour choices will be lovely and perfect, because it's the way you're seeing it. So go for it. If you're seeing something completely different, then go for it. I'm going to take a bit of this blue and I'm going to just weave that into this, one of the sections of raffia, because I'm feeling that's what I'm seeing. It's a little bit of a slight tint in there. I'm going to try the colours out just to think, because I can't always tell. Let's try them. Okay, that's feeling a little bit almost like I want to put a bit more warmth back in there. So that's what I'm going to do. That feeling very grey now. And take a little bit more burnt sienna and just put a little bit of warmth back in. I've gone almost very blue on there. That's why it's great to experiment, because with different amounts of paint, just get back into pressing it. So I almost want a little tint of blue, but not so that it's really grey. See if we've got somewhere in between that now. Try that one. Okay, yeah, that's definitely warmer than last time, so I'm happy to go with that one. And then I'm going to add another one, another layer that's got just a few, so this is a bit warmer. So you could use yellow ochre. I'm going for 3 different tones there for this raffia to really fill it out and make it a little bit different. So I'm going to go for some white. This time I'm putting in some of this Cajun yellow in there. But you could use yellow ochre and a bit of white tint as well, or you can even use this is a great colour, so buff titanium, which is basically without, it's white titanium white without the bleach in it. So I'll pop a bit of that on there as well, because that makes quite a good colour as it is actually. It's great for paths and things as well, but anything that's got natural. So yeah, so it's just got less warmth in it, that one, hasn't it, than that one. But again, you know, you can compare. That's the buff. That's a bit more of a tint, so that's kind of a bit lighter and brighter. So I might even mix a combination of that actually, just add some buff titanium into it and see what happens. Experimenting. I'm having a good play around with this. We've got mine, yeah, that's a bit better. So I'm going to go with these 3 tones now and start to kind of bring in, and I've just got this nice round bush, a bit pointy at the end. I'm just having to be mindful though of that water. So if you feel it's getting really muddy, give it a good change. Because I think sometimes we get so absorbed in it, in what we're doing, we end up muddying our colours a bit. So I'm just really going to layer these up. I'm just going to take, you know, kind of the shape, twist them and turn them, and so all of these shapes are so they're kind of like just move your brush around and just explore and experiment with some of the ways the colours you think it's making. I've got a pink one in there now, so I'm using the combination of these 3 colours. I think I might get some of these colours that are under there. Actually, I do want to pop a bit more blue back in there, because I'm seeing it then, a bit more blue. Just some, so I'll get these ones that are underneath and then finish those ones over the top that are going over. And just explore with the mark making of making the raffia. It's not something we maybe paint very often. I think that's the beauty of when we're doing all these new topics. We're trying out things that we just wouldn't normally look at, which is lovely. So I'll see where else I can see this bluish colour. There's a little bit there. I'm going to leave a bit of that there. I'm just building this up, so it will look really awful to start with. So don't worry if you think, oh my goodness, what's happening? It always at the start looks, you think it's not going to work. And it just does. I know a lot of people who pop their work and they're doing it on their own, will just spin it, and actually if you just stick with it that bit longer, it will start to transform. So I'm going to go in with this other yellowy colour as well here. And it's just a process of building up all of these different colours, combinations. So we get all of these lovely textures and things like that. It goes over the top as well and overlaps. Pop that in. All adds to it. So just still building up, building up, building up, keep building it up. Different colours. You can go in with a thinner strand if you need to. The colour. I'm just adding a little bit of yellow straight over the top of this, so to brighten it up a little bit, make it pop forwards a bit. Mm, Thinner brush, I think. Just for some little wavy bits, I'll just grab one. Yeah, so you might have some thinner ones to pop over the top as well and pop them in. And sometimes what happens is we can get so many colours in that we lose some of the some of the shadow, and we can just pop that back in with a thinner brush. I'm just going to bring in some of these in here, some of these really much thinner ones around this area. I'll try and recreate that. So I've just got a little flat brush right on its side, a really tiny one for this bit. And to pull that over the shadow. And anything that crosses over, anything that crosses over the top. And way in. So at the moment, we haven't got anything popping forwards. So don't worry about that. We will pop those highlights in as well. I'm just concentrating on getting a few of these rights in there. All the frilly bits that we've got going on here. You can always add a little bit of, a darker colour as well. I might add a little bit of darker brown to some of these just to get where they're not very bright, or you're getting the underside of something, pop that in. That's the way of doing that. You know, if you've got a twist and turn in it, just pop that in into the raffia. Mhm. 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 Just kind of letting our brush go quite naturally there. So this might be where I might, you know, if I've just made sure I've just used a multi, some of the different colours, so it's not too one colour. I might just a bit of a pop of where it's a bit lighter, you know, where there are some of the layers, just pop some of those colours through a bit. And then just popping in a highlight now. So this is where we kind of pick out some of the brighter bits, and then that bit of the basket will pop forwards a bit. So I'm just going to go in with lighter colours. So I'm just going to go in with a highlight now. So I'm going to mix just a little bit of white. Let's see. I mean, you can use white, just be careful if you're going to use it everywhere. I might pick out the very lightest bits with white only. If we put, problem is, and this will just highlight the bits that are really kind of where you're getting that reflection really. The problem with putting the white everywhere is it just becomes part of um the basket, and it doesn't there's no contrast if you have it everywhere. So just pick particular areas where you're going to have it very light, and then just go in with a tint on the other areas so it's not. So this side is getting a lot of light here. There's a bit on this edge, and then we're just picking up on there, and then the back bit hasn't got much on it at all. So the other way of doing it, as I said, is just to make a tint, but that will pick out and bring forward some of those areas. Sometimes you get it on the top of the basket as well. But I'm not really doing, all I'm just doing is just pulling a few strands in. Not worrying too much about exactly what's going on, just naturally letting my hand move now. So I'm just picking out a few bits. I've still got this area here that's quite light. And then there's a few little bits here. Again, I'm just being selective. I'm not picking everywhere. There's these little bits here. I'm using a much thinner brush now, which is just a little flat brush, and just using it on the edge so we can pick out some of the edges here of the raffia where it's a little bit more frayed. Top of that one. We have a little bit here. We're just picking out carefully now so it's not all going to look the same. And then if at this point you think, oh gosh, I really could do with, it's got very, very light in places, could really do with darkening it out, then if you want to pop some shadow in and you think, yes, definitely more shadow there, then that's a good time just to get some of the little bits that you feel like you know, we've lost with all of this lovely texture, and just pop them back in. It's easy, really easy to kind of like start popping it all in and you think, ah, got no shadow left now. That's all right. And then you can just really focus on, so the shadow and things at the bottom of the basket as well. You might want to pop some of the bits that are going around underneath in a bit. So it feels like it's, the shadow is where it should be underneath, which is tends to be where the shadow falls. And then sometimes it's in here as well. It's on the top of the basket because it's where the eggs are just kind of perched and there's a gap between it. So we're not really drawing round it. We're just, marking where the shadow of those eggs is because underneath the top of the basket, which is what you'd expect to see, a big gap down there. So it helps as well to be able to see where, that it is at the edge of a basket as well. Some of that in. Those little areas of shadow. See here, then you can decide, am I going to put the shadow underneath? Am I going to make that deeper? Do I want to make it darker as well? And start to think about all of these things. Okay. Yeah, you do tend to get that really dark area up at the bottom. Yeah, so I'm going to take a pause there. See, have a little think about where you are and come back to you in a bit. Yes, so if you are feeling that it's this, this is all, you can't actually see the surface, it feels like it's maybe floating a little bit. And actually this does, I would say, lots of people do feel like that about when you've not got anything in there. You can always just pop a little bit of a, just kind of an edge of something as though there was the edge of where a wall is or a table or something like that. You would tend to, and you can do that in any colours. You can decide on the top and the bottom and what colour you'd like to do that. If I was to demo that quite quickly here, I would put in, tend to get, I'm just going with the purple here. Purple and white. So you can choose what colour the wall is and what colour the table surface is. Look at the existing one that I've got. Probably. Probably best to do this at the time, to be fair, but I'm just going to pop in just follow this edge across. I've gone in just a little bit lighter just so I can see where I'm going for the moment. But then I'm just going to darken that off a little bit. And you can just, you can just work these things in. with the similar colours and tones that you mixed before. Payne's grey in there as well, actually. Mhm. Yeah, just kind of build it up and build it in. Shadow as well. Actually. Yeah, you can always work a whole colour back over the top again really easily with acrylic, which is a nice thing. So if you decided you do want to change anything, you can always change what you've got really fairly easily, as long as you've got plenty of paint on your brush. And change it that way. And just blend in. Yeah, it's as simple as that, really. You know, it's just we just add on layers over the top. You can even add in, you know, if you've got any, even within that surface, any lighter areas, you can bring those in. You can even bring movement into it. I mean, mine was obviously very blended, but you can still add texture to it if you want to as well. And some movement. See how you get on. Just have a little play with all the different colours that you can use. Oh, so I think we'll move on to the eggs, because I might come back to the basket and add something to that later, but at the moment, quite happy to leave it there and then move on and have to think about these eggs. So it'll be the same system when of you know, popping in and building up the layers with it again. But I'm going to try and pop in some of the shadows between these as well, because that gives it some wonderful depth as well. So I'm looking at, you know, between these eggs, where the shadows are, really just help. So you can go in, just decide what colour you want to go in with, whether it's a bit of Payne's grey and brown, or whether you want to go in with a, you know, and add a purple to it or a blue to it to kind of make it dark. You can try either of those. But it just helps. Sometimes actually it really helps you see the shape. So rather than try and draw the actual egg shapes, you're drawing, well, not drawing, but we, you know, we're creating the shape of the eggs by putting the shadows in, the gaps between. And a lot of people find that a really helpful way of working, as opposed to trying to draw the egg shape. So That's something you consider. So you always get a shadow cast between these eggs anyway. You start to really look and see in shadows. That's a really helpful way of doing it. Pop that in. See if I can paint in these shadows to create my shape. And just start to see that emerging, which is nice. Just going to put my colour on a bit lighter there. I think I might even have to put the lighting on the moment. And what we're not drawing round shapes, we're literally just looking, observing where the shadows fall between. A little bit of a different approach. Negative spaces, really, what we're doing. Like that one's coming through, actually, what a shadow. So where it's really, you get these much lighter colours and you can't see, there's some shadow, but not loads. I'm just putting it in very lightly. Not as heavy as the others. There's issue there because I've got a little bit of. And then there might be some other bits as well where you've got some other little bits of raffia and things you need to put in, or some basket weave, that are on the edge, because you're just trying to decide where the last egg was or whatever. So you just get those in underneath, flip those. Shadow a little bit. And again, how deep your shadows are, how, the depth of your shadows is completely up to you and your preference. As I said, because some people like a more new, a more slightly more restricted palette in terms of the level of contrast. So less, less contrast between lights and darks. And other people really like a heavy contrast. So until you start doing it, it's just difficult to know what your preference would be. Okay, so the eggs, have got great fun. People have loved doing this with the eggs this week. Just to get in some beautiful colours. They're so pretty and so nice because we don't often work with such lovely pastels when we're looking at still life. So it's nice to explore the different ones. I'll just move that aside. Move some of those colours off now. So yeah, so you can use some reds and whites for the pinks, or you might have a pink in your palette. Again, depending on the colours you've got, will give you a different finish. That's quite candy pink at the moment, so I think a lot less pink in those ones. But again, just decide on the colour you want to use. I'm just going to pop my studio lights on. Better. It's starting to go really dark. Yeah, so depending on the red you've got, it'll give you a different pink. Warmer reds like Cajun red, things like that are going to give you a warmer pink. But just have a little explore. And as I said, you can change these colours if you want to completely change the palette, go for it. Sure painting. But yeah, it's really, really enjoyable just kind of going through these lovely colours. Just getting the mid-tone on first on this case. Make them a little bit more 3D by getting in some of the shapes. And don't worry if you kind of make the wrong shape and you go out a little bit, it doesn't matter, because we'll just put the other colour back over the top when it's a little bit drier. Really easily done. So you can even add, if there's some much lighter areas on your on your egg, say that one's it's more in the light. You want to add those whilst it's wet, you can do that as well. You want it to blend a bit more. Create a little bit more shape in there as you're going. By all means do that. And it's a lot of it's like looking where the light source is coming from as well. So I think it's coming from over the top here. You're getting this side is much more lit, that's much more in the shadow around the back here. So you can observe whereabouts this light's coming from and make those bits of the eggs lighter as well, catching those little bits there. This one's so bright, it's almost like the pinkness is almost disappearing from it. Start to get into just the lovely brush strokes and everything, and really enjoying moving the paint around. You start to lose all sense of time, which is great. I am just going to drop, because it's difficult to see where those two kind of meet. So I'm just going to drop in a slightly darker pink just to suggest that one's there. I'm going to, can't do it with too obvious. I'm going to blend a lot of it, really soft. I think with things like the eggs, we want to keep, we don't want too much of an edge on things. Just enough of a suggestion that Mm. And vice versa, if there's any areas that are catching the in shadow a little bit, you can pop a, just pull those shapes around a bit. They're all quite light, these ones, even though. And you can work on each of the eggs, building them up like that, or you can just, if you want to feel like something's a bit finished, because it feels like, you're constantly working through bits, then you can go in with, I've got a fan brush here, but like I said, you could use a bristly brush. And it is a little bit hit and miss. So if you want to try it first, over the top of something on here, you can, but I'm just going to dip that in and just decide what colour that's going to be, whether it's going to be brown, Payne's grey, whatever colour, a bit purple maybe. Just have a little play, see what effect you might get, or whether you're going to tap it really lightly or just in little bits, and whether it will give you that kind of nice egg, the egg tones. I'm just going to pop a bit more Payne's grey in actually. Or with the fan brush, I'm not going to use all of it. I'm just going to use the edge here, just one edge there. I don't want to end up with a fan effect on there. I just want one. So sometimes you have to just kind of work the paint into your fan brush a little bit. I'd say so. I'm not going to have it absolutely everywhere. It's just deciding where you want these speckles and just building it up like that. A bit more control if you've just got one edge of the fan brush as well. To where the speckles are, but there's nothing, you don't have to get them exact. They're all going to be very different, aren't they? We just want, what we want is to capture the feel of in this basket. Away with your brush and get a stipple on there. I'm popping a bit more on mine now, quite enjoying that. You can make it your own. Don't have to follow the patterns that are there at all. You can just put all the eggs in your own way. And then, keep going, getting your next kind of, your next colours and things like that. And so what we've got. So yeah, we just have a little play with the colours. I mean, I'm going to go with these. You could try some, blues and greens, bit of yellow to lighten it up if you've got blue and green. Or you can go in with a turquoise or a cerulean colour. Might have a different colour greens in your set. This one is a really dark green. You can always mix that with a bit of blue and a bit of yellow and see what colour you come up with. So a good colour to give you that almost a bit of a turquoisey egg, and then you can add some green, is a phthalo blue, which has got really earthy, really kind of dark to it. I think I've got one like it. Let's today. Let's see. That will make a, you can add a little bit of light blue to that. I'm going to go in with this cerulean blue here and a bit of green, or a bit of this darker green actually. Make it a little bit more like this. And then I'm going to add some white. Just make it a bit more pastel. But you could go in with a vibrant one if you prefer vibrant colours, by all means, put those in. I'm in trouble getting the light out today. You can go really pastel with the white in it. There you go. So I'm going to put that in. Just enjoy all of those lovely marks. Really relaxing. There, I'm going to add a little bit more blue. I think I've just got a bit of ordinary cobalt blue there. I'm going to add some white to that, a tint to that. Again, you could just drop in a tiny bit of green or something if you want it to take it to be just not quite as icy blue. A little bit of green or something in it. You really can just put any colours that you want to. And I think I'm going to take some of the blue I had earlier as well. I'm just going to got to put these bits of the basket on. So before I paint this purple, I'm just going to bring in one of these lovely blue raffia bits here. That just kind of lifts. Sometimes we put brights in when we've got very muted colours like this, or pastels. Brights just lift a painting beautifully. Pops of colour in amongst, a more pastel-y palette. Really nice. I think it's just a bit of playfulness, I think. Just gonna put some highlights on there. Make it real. You can just tap it on as well, you know, just tapping it on is quite nice. Or you can paint it on. Just go with what's happening with your hand really in the flow. And then you could even go for like a lemony yellow in there if you wanted to for change. Or stick with the warmer yellow and just put more white with it. It depends which one you've got in your kit really. I'm just going to use the one that I've already got out. That's definitely warmer, I can tell. Not quite as, you know, acidic. You want a more lemon yellow, more of a bright, vibrant, then go that is still pastely, then you need a lemon yellow really for that one. But I'm just going to use this one. You can see here that this has got like some quite shadowy bits underneath. I'll pop those on in a minute. Really sucks you into the painting, does this? One under there. And a little bit of brown, I think. I almost want this kind of brown grey colour actually, so a little bit of brown there. The bottom of the egg, I don't want it to be too dark, so I'm going to mix up a little bit of this yellow with it. Sometimes you can just use a bit of the accent colour, so it doesn't feel too harsh whilst you're doing that. And then bring the down one underneath it. Just make up a bit of shadow. So you can always use shadow as well to pull the shape back in if you kind of splodged a bit of paint or whatever. So I'm making it a bit warmer underneath. Um, We're just following that kind of building up these layers for each of these eggs. spots and then any shadowy areas. That just creates the shape and a bit of depth so that it's not just flat. I've got a funny shaped egg up there. I'm splodging this on a bit, so I'll neaten that up by just kind of tidying the background over it. And then got a bit of orangey colour. So if you use an orange or, if you use a red, I've got Cadian red, which is a warmer one, which makes a good peach colour actually. You use that with a bit of yellow and a bit of white. So it's the warmer reds make great peachy colours. Not really coming out very well, but I think that's probably enough to make just one. So get some yellow with it. So it's kind of like, you see how that's turning peachy already, and then obviously we just want a bit of white in there. So yeah, so Cadian red's a good one for peachy colours. Gives you a peachy pink as well with white. We're going and building it up. Making up the light areas on the eggs, and then any dark areas. They're usually underneath the ones that are slightly warmer. And also, wherever you then start to see any little shadows between the eggs, those kinds of little marks will be good to go on. I'm going to use a different colour purple this time. It's not more warm to it. Add a little bit of blue if it's a bit too warm. So we can play with the colour all the time to get to where we want to get to with it. And shadowy a little bit more underneath over. And then any of the lighter areas on there before we put the speckles on. And also we can look between the shapes as well and start to, pop a few more shadows and things into place where we need, between the eggs, or you may have missed out a little bit of a darker area, etc. We can come back and tidy up like that, so it's feeling a bit more, those eggs are a bit more 3D, but just work your way through with the speckles as well. over the top, that helps. Around the sides.
Becky,
There, we're just working through these lovely speckled eggs, building up those colours and textures. As I said, you can speckle them much more if you want to. As much or as full as you want. I'm going for more. I do quite enjoy this process actually of speckling, so I think that's my reason for doing it. Do more of what you're enjoying doing, really. Things to remember because I've got loads of textures and things going on with this, with our paintings, is to hold your work from a distance, pop it on the shelf because it always looks so different from a distance. So I'm kind of getting nearish to where I would be to finish, but I'm just going to just check through, make sure I've got all my gaps like there. There's one I can see it needs some more shadow in there. There's some pots on. I've got a little bit of shadow between some things as well. I'm just neatening up the edge of this egg. Got a bit out of control. Find my thinner brush. So one of the things is, just making sure um, maybe you've got a bit of the reflection on there. Well, not reflection, sorry, that's completely the wrong word, but the shadow. Shadow on the legs as well. I was going to get my brush. I'm going to take this tape off as well, so more of a different look on there. Something. Always feels so different when you take the tape off. Feels a little bit more finished. So I would just want to be putting a little bit more distance between the eggs. I've got some of those shadows need to be a bit tighter, but I've got trying to find my brush that's nice and thin. To get those shadows in properly. And we'll pop underneath just so we get the edge of the basket in here as well and get that depth there. Sometimes between the eggs, we do need some sense of distance between there as well, but it's just how much you want to pop in. You can do a bit of a broken line as well, so it's not so solid, but just to, show that there is some There's a bit of shadow in it as well. And then we're just, making sure we've got those last light bits on. Some of mine have got a little bit darker, but I think we're going to have to stop there tonight. And again, if I was to do a little bit more, I'd be going back and just lightening up some of those highlighted bits. I might actually just do that very quickly. Having said that, just to create that top layer of I think sometimes we can be a bit tentative with our tints, and they're not, they don't create maybe enough of contrast. I'm just going to be careful not to go over though. Not to go over my speckling. So I might just have to be a bit more selective about where I'm putting the highlights. It just needed a bit of a lift of where that light source is coming. Feel. I'm happy with that now. Just wasn't quite bright enough. Sometimes we just need to look at the contrast, especially if we've got heavy contrast at the bottom. We might just need a little bit more balance at the top as well. I think. Yeah, it's just nice to experiment and try new things and make beautiful, just explore these beautiful colours that we have in nature. And really just pay attention to little finer details that we get in life and enjoy that. So I hope that's been helpful, and and that you enjoy doing it and you just fell right into the flow. All right, thank you. Bye.